I'm Coral. I am 68 years old.
My name is Kara. I am 43 years old.
I'm Amy. I am 46.
My name is Jamie. I'm 41.
Hi, I'm Erin. I'm 45 years old.
Hi, my name is Katie. I am 52 years old.
I'm Angela. I'm 45.
I'm Nicole. I am 45.
Welcome back to Interwoven's third season, featuring conversations centered on care and on celebrating and supporting women in middle life. We're thrilled this season to exchange support with In Context Inc., not your mother's digital marketing agency. From customized websites to SEO, they work with you at your pace, within your budget, and ensure that you feel seen and heard at all times. Visit incontextseo.com/interwoven to learn more. Today's episode features Interwoven's co-founder, Theresa, as she talks with matchmaker and dating over 50 specialist, Lori Mendelsohn of smartfunnysingle.com about dating in middle life, changing dating paradigms, letting go of expectations, what makes a great first date, and more. A huge thank you to this month's featured musicians, Janet Ransdell and Susie Muehlbauer, for their contributions. Remember to hit subscribe so you can be the first to know about new episodes, and visit our website so that you can sign up for our newsletter, register for community events, and access all of our resources. Find us at interwoven.com. That's interwovxn.com.
Hi, Lori. Thanks for being here.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
I'm dying to know a little background about how you got started in all of this. I know that you are a student of human nature. Can you talk about the moments you realized that this was your calling?
My backstory is not as a dating coach and a matchmaker, although I started doing matchmaking when I was 19 years old. It was when I was in college and I had a friend and I had just met a guy, and I intuitively said, oh, you two should meet. And then they ended up getting married. And then it kept happening over and over and over and over again, resulting in marriages and now great grandkids, because, that was 40 years ago. I'm 66 years old, so I've been doing it a while. Interestingly enough, I met a medium a few weeks ago, and he knew literally nothing about me. And he looked at me, and the first thing that he said was, when did you know that you had this gift of connecting people? And I said, I've always known it. I just was afraid to use it because I was a misfit kid. I was empathic. I was very much a loner. I was that odd girl that no one ever chose for teams or sports because, I don't have a athletic bone in my body. But I knew that I had a gift, and I knew that the gifts that I had, one day I kept telling myself, you're going to use those and you're going to be helping people. In fact, one of my clients yesterday, when I was doing a coaching session with her, she said to me, have you been a psychologist before? And I said, well, she said, this is just so easy for you. And it absolutely is easy for me. It's easy for me to see the challenges that women are having and how women get in their own way. And I feel that I am that culvert to them seeing what it is that's blocking them and helping them release it. They have a lot of aha moments, to quote Oprah. They have a lot of moments that they're swearing and saying, holy blank. How did you know that about me? And I just know. I see intuitively things that people don't normally see. And the gifts are hard to explain.
In that vein, I wanted to ask, how did you make peace with the empath in you? It makes childhood a little challenging when you feel things so deeply and don't have the language to explain why. How did you move through that?
I struggled with it. In all fairness, I struggled until about my mid to late 50s. I went through a lot of therapy, and my therapist said to me, why don't you change your perspective and realize that you're not going to be everyone's cup of tea, and that's okay. And you don't need to be. You don't need to be that popular girl, which is something that I struggled with. Of course, when you're growing up, you want to be the most popular girl. And I think what I did was I put my efforts into my career. Because I was odd, I knew that I had design talent. I was a fashion designer for 33 years. A good part of that being in New York and also all over the country. I had my own brand that I sold to Saks Fifth Avenue and Neiman Marcus and all these high-end stores. And I just embraced this talent, this design talent that I had. But it wasn't until my early 60s that I really let out this calling because of self-acceptance. It would be going against my own grain and my own beliefs in myself if I tried to block it down and if I tried to conform, because life is just a lot easier living in the space of who I really am.
Isn't that one of the gifts of middle life, is that we start to realize that, that our true joy comes from being centered within ourselves with our own set of unique gifts that we came into this world with, and finding ways to live in that.
Without question. When you realize, this is who I am. This is what I'm meant to do. I'm not going to fight it anymore, because fighting puts me in a headspace that I hate. I mean, I worked in corporations where I would just question every single policy that they had, to the point that they'd fire me. When you just release and accept, this is who I am, it's just such a more peaceful, gratifying, and beautiful life that we create for ourselves.
I wish we could bring that to our young girls to help shift that prioritization in childhood. But what a gift to bring that to dating in middle life, finding connection. The best connections, you really have to start with your connection to yourself the most.
You can come into it and you can be in that space of, I'm comfortable. I know who I am. I know what I bring. I know the quality of the person who I am. I know that I have the emotional availability. You know, a lot of women are challenged by finding that, but women are also challenged by a myriad of other narratives.
On that note, what are you addressing and talking about with your clients when you're getting started?
Let me give a little bit of background how I got to this space of being a dating coach. So I was divorced at 60 years old, and really never thought that I would be in that place. It was a defining moment for me, because I was afraid. I was terrified, actually. I had this whole story in my head that I'll never meet someone. I started doing online dating, and I started meeting a lot of men, and I started making a lot of mistakes in that whole process. And I realized that I needed to teach what I learned and what I did right and what I did wrong to women in our age group. Because what I repeatedly hear is, here it comes, there are no good men out there. Now, we know that that is not true. And we also know that our words have power. And we also know that when we put that out, that is what becomes, and that is what happens. So I lived in that space that there are no good men out there, that they're cheater, pumpkin eaters, and they're sly devils, and they're catfishers, and they're every label in the book in the dating world. But I realized there are also some really, really good ones. They weren't really good for me, but there were some really nice men out there. And I felt that it was my duty to teach women how to sieve through these dating apps. I learned how to write profiles from a male POV, so a man would be interested in starting a conversation. I started doing matchmaking after I sold my business. Then COVID happened, and no one could go out on a date. So I pretty much just shut down, and I realized I have to teach this to women now. But most importantly, rather than just dating, how to find out who they are, what their patterns are, what their blocks are, what their barriers are, what the cycle is that they keep doing over and over again. And that's the work that I do. The work is that I go back into a woman's youth, her whole dating narrative, what she learned, what she thought she was supposed to do. Because we have these stories that we were told, especially in women who are in their 60s, that we need to find only men who are professional, that make X amount of money, that drive X cars, who have X homes. And it's just a lot of hooey is what it is. At the end of the day, that isn't the man that any of us really wants. We want a man who is good, kind, supportive, and who shows up for us, who is there when we're sick. As we go into older years, 70s and 80s, who's going to be there when we go through illness. We don't want to go through this again. That's the work that I do.
That's really meaningful. And especially as we are getting to know ourselves in a different way through middle life, and then thinking about the coming decades, it's very different. Was this a pandemic pivot for you?
Yes, it was. Because I had clients lined up for matchmaking, ready to go. And then I couldn't do it. And I thought, okay, I have to do something to support myself, to be who I am, which is I provide service. I help others. I encourage others. I lift others up. It gives me the same amount of joy to help others as it does for me to fall in love with someone or be in a relationship. What's going on right now is I have never been busier. I am having record months. And, full disclosure, I moved to Maine, and there's a story to why I moved to Maine, but I moved to Maine and I have never had more Milwaukee clients. And I'm thinking, gosh, if I had stayed in Racine, which is where I used to live, I wonder if that would have happened. But to get really woo, I had this thing called an astrocartography chart done, and it told me that this sweet spot for me to be in is in the Portland, Maine area, and there's a swath of 45 miles east and west and north and south, and that's where I'm living right now. I'm making new connections. I met someone great. It's all happening because the energy shift for me, this is where I'm supposed to be. But the cool thing is that I am attracting all of these Milwaukee women, and the majority of my business still is people from Wisconsin.
It's quite powerful when you feel that energetic shift. You've jumped in the river and now you flow. Let's dig in a little bit to the dating life in middle life.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the differences about dating in middle life? I know we touched on a few points before.
Mm-hmm. The difference that I see is that while people still want, well, I'll start with the sexual portion of it, because I think in our 20s, 30s, and 40s, the majority of people, that is their priority. They have to have chemistry. We're at a time in our lives at those ages where we're procreating, and nature truly is taking over. But as we go through menopause and men go through menopause, I call it companionship at this point, shared interests, shared experiences, shared goals is more the imperative now. It's the icing on the cake to have an amazing sexual relationship. As we age, our body changes.
This should be something we're talking about because our bodies are no longer biologically wired for fertility goals.
Right. With that being said, yes, when we go through menopause, our desire changes. Our bodies are unable to have sex as long as we used to. And the beautiful thing about that is that also happens to men. So it becomes more of, I'm not going to say an acceptance, it's an understanding that as we age, the things that are truly more important are the quality of a human being, what this person adds to your life and how they contribute, and vice versa, how you add and contribute to their life, and the kindness and the humility and the conversation becomes more important, and the shared interests and the goals become more important rather than procreation and having banging kitchen table sex is what I call it. Our bodies change and our body shape changes. And it's also that acceptance, which is something I struggle with. It's that acceptance of, wow, I don't have that really tiny waistline anymore.
We have to come to terms with our body no longer doing things it used to and now doing things that it never did before. That is a mental and emotional adjustment for us.
Without question. And we now discuss ailments. I've asked men this. I said, did you imagine that we would ever be having these conversations in our 20s, that we would be talking about our list of medications or how to get senior discounts on certain things? Yeah. But I think that as we age, we shift into a mindset of forgiveness, of wanting to help others, and to be far more compassionate. And that's the sweet spot of finding a partner who is in that same space that you're in.
That's beautiful. And I think it makes a lot of us exhale. I did get a question about what if you never dated before? Mm-hmm. So what if you married young without really dating around much and that relationship ended however it ended. Yeah. And now in middle life, you're trying to get back out there and make a connection.
Mm-hmm. What I would do is, and this is something that I advise my clients, is go into dating without any expectation, which is very hard because, there is a Disney-esque theory and, that we were taught as little girls that this prince comes along and takes care of us and all of our problems are solved. And very few of us ever experience that. The prince creates a lot of problems more than solves them. We need to go into it as I am meeting a new person. Full stop. I'm meeting a new person. I want to learn about this man or woman. I want to learn about this person, get to know them, be curious about who they are, what they love to do, what they're about mentally, physically, and not have this expectation that it will end in something. We project an ending, and we were taught the ending is when we were younger, the ending is we're married, we're getting married, we're having kids. That's our ending. And hopefully we have a happy life together. Now, I really advise women to just live in the moment and enjoy the company of a man or a woman and see how you feel. See what their energy is like. See how you feel. Assess when you are with that person, what this person brings out in you. Do they make you feel safe or do they trigger you? And vice versa. We don't have to make these decisions anymore of time. A lot of people will say, well, I'm in my 60s. I'm running out of time. There's the runway shorter. Yes, the runway is shorter. You could also get hit by a bus at 40. We don't really know how long our life is going to be. If we go into it with an open mind and a curiosity that I just want to discover what this person is like without pretense, without expectation, without an end game in mind, just go with it. And that's the beginning and end of it. In terms of how to date, just be yourself. You should show up, you should shower, you should have good hygiene, but you should be yourself. You should wear things that make you feel either comfortable or sexy or a combination of both. You should wear things that make you feel good, and you should have conversations that challenge someone else, that elicit conversation. That's it. That's dating. And dating is, in my opinion, it's a series of these meetings to see compatibility and see if you want to go to the next date. You don't have to say, well, it's been 5 dates. We should be, in a relationship already. No, I have to be here on 5 dates and see if you enjoy that person's company. And then if you want a 6th date, then you go on a 6th date. It's that simple.
How do you help your clients avoid or work through the scarcity mindset? I better take this person because there might not be much better out there.
Well, there was something that you mentioned earlier, which is that in order to be in a relationship, you need to first be in a relationship with yourself. If you're not at the point of being in a relationship with yourself, that's the first step, is that we need to work that part out and figure out why you are not in a relationship with yourself, why you are constantly looking for the gratitude and the connection with another person, also known as semi-codependence. If you are happy and content with your life, you will not make the mistake of latching onto someone just to fill that void. That void can be the size of the Grand Canyon. If you are in a place where, God, I've got to be with someone or else I'm worthless, or there are plenty of wonderful people out there, men, women, every shape, size, color. What the biggest mistake that I see is that people have this idea of what he or she needs to look like and be like. There's plenty out there. There are plenty of great people out there. We just need to be more open to the outside packaging. I'm going to give you an example, if I may, okay? So last week, my stuff was packed in Cudahy in a storage facility, and he moved it out here to Maine. A heck of a nice guy. He's 61 years old. He wasn't George Clooney, I'll leave it at that. But he told me, he said, I can't get a date. And he said, I'm fun, I'm outgoing, I'm world traveled, I'm curious, he had a lot of really good qualities. He was a good listener, he was fun, he was funny, kind. He said, I don't really understand it. And I told him, I said, the problem is that most women are educated. He had a building company prior to being a long distance mover. The problem that I saw was that women have the education that the only acceptable man is a man who has an undergrad degree, who is an executive, and all of the accoutrements that go along with it. Here was this wonderful, kind man. He's a mover. He's a cross-country mover. The great thing is he's self-employed. He can stop at, wherever he wants and explore. But yet he also had built a really successful building company, and he had even built his own ski lodge where it could house 50 people. That's pretty impressive. He didn't fit the mold of what we think we need to be with. That's the biggest thing, is really, we just have this mold, this idea.
That goes back to what we were talking about when we first started talking here, is that programming, that in those messages that we were sent when we were young. What's important? What should we prioritize in another person?
Mm-hmm. Also, to get family acceptance, that's another one. Friend acceptance, family acceptance, well, why aren't you dating someone who is X, Y, and Z? I always say, turn it back to them. Ask them, why is that important to you? I want to be in a happy relationship. I met someone who is a builder. He's not an executive. Explain to me, help me understand why that matters.
So then when you are helping your client create an online dating profile, mm-hmm. Can you reveal some of your fundamental tips?
The fundamental tips, the biggest tip is that I can give everyone is do not write down what you don't want. Because a lot of women write a list of you must be this, you must be that, you must be at least this height, you must make at least this amount of money. Going back to this whole programming of what we think we need, that's the number one tip. The number two tip is have great photos. And number three, the tip is tell a story about who you are. And when you're writing that story, and this is not to give away what I do, but in that story, incorporate what that man who you're seeking or woman, who they are. So they read this story and they say, wow, that's me. I can see myself with this woman or man. Yeah, I see myself with this person, rather than the mundane of, I like to go out to eat. I like going to movies. I like to chill on Netflix. I like sports. I like going hiking. I like going biking. Okay, well, everyone likes that. Be the woman who stands out. Mine is really silly. Mine is I spend my days unsubscribing from unwanted emails, removing the tags that are on furniture accessories. And when I'm feeling especially frisky, I'll go to Taco Bell and rearrange the assortment of condiments just for fun.
Yes, but it keeps it, like you said, different and fun and in a positive light.
Yes. Yeah. So this guy sees, wow, that woman's either crazy or quirky.
So another question we got was, what makes a good first date?
I'm going to say an equal back and forth in a conversation. A major complaint with women is, and men, I'll say this, and with men, is that people use the time on a first date to recite a monologue. Don't do that. Ask a question, wait for an answer. It should be a back and forth. It should spark interest. It should spark conversation. You should keep it fun. You should keep it light. Just look at it as a discovery period. Just keep it open and loose and flowing and without pretense or without preconceived notion or without expectation. So I always advise people to do something outdoors on their first date, because you're not sitting across from a table from someone who, I hate to say it, many times looks nothing like their picture. It should be fun, light, short, casual, simple, no meals, no heavy duty things. It just should not be that. It should be short, sweet, fun, flirty, good conversation back and forth. That's it.
What questions would you recommend asking on those early stages of dating?
Well, there's an article that the New York Times published years ago called 33 or 35 Questions That Lead to Love. The people who are listening can just Google that, but it's really good. So the questions that I advise people to ask are questions that deserve an answer. Not like, what is your favorite food? Okay, you're going to say, linguine al pesto. That is my favorite food. Okay, where's that leading? Right? Or tell me about your family. Well, I have 2 sisters and a brother, and both my parents are deceased. Okay, that leads us nowhere. So the way that the questions should be posed are, I'd love to hear about your family. Can you share with me one of your most precious moments of your childhood? Another question could be, what are you most proud of? Tell me about someone who influenced your life, and how did they do so? Because that creates an open space for the person to say, wow, I really got to think about that one. Yeah, I think my father was my biggest influence. And then I have the opportunity to say, tell me more.
And it creates a story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Tell me more. I have a question, which is, if your house were on fire, and this takes thought because I already know the question, but if your house were on fire, and aside from taking your children and your dog or your cat and your laptop, what would you grab first? What is that one precious thing to you that means so much? And what is the significance of it? And that isn't fun and flirty, but it leads to an opening of conversation, and it leads to them saying back to you, wow, let me think about that a minute. What about you? What would you take? That gives them time to think about theirs. So it's questions that are not especially heavy. My favorite one is, tell me about the happiest day of your life, other than the day that your kids were born. And that puts someone in a really great mood. They're telling you about the happiest day of their life.
But all those questions also make a person feel like you really care about knowing more about them, genuinely would like to get to know them better.
Yeah.
And hear their life experiences.
Yes.
And
here's a warning label here. I've gone out on dates where I've asked those questions and the guy has said to me, Lori, I really think you're terrific, but you're really too deep for me. Okay, thank you. No need for self-selection here. We're already, you're not my guy. Because my guy would be interested in those questions. And it isn't a place where I would go, God, I shouldn't have asked those questions. I think, wow, that's great. That's really great that you pulled yourself out of the hat here. And I'm not going to waste my time investing any more in you or thinking about you. I'll move on to the next. Yeah.
There's so much more that goes into your work with people than just dating.
The last 2 weeks, the clients that I've been working with have been either like singing, oh my God, how did you do that? I never thought of that. Or they've been crying, which is good because crying is growth. I have some young men who are hiring me, which is great because they don't know how to be in relationships. They'd want to learn how to date. And people come in with one agenda that, what do I need to do? Let's rephrase. What work do you need to do on you to get you to a place where you will find men? It creates this whole opportunity for them to say, God, I've just been doing the same thing over and over and over again. No wonder these relationships are not working out for me. Theresa, the number one thing is that women who are strong and bold and successful, they don't leave this armor at the door. They don't use their feminine energy.
Which I love so much. And working with new mamas, this is a big one that comes up, is figuring out how to create a balance between the masculine and the feminine energies that we all possess. We are rewarded for decades as we establish ourselves in society, as we establish our careers, that we're rewarded for productivity and big time independence versus the nurturing and the quiet.
And the support and the asking for help. I mean, this is one of those things that constantly keeps coming up. We're trained now. I don't need to ask anyone for help because I'm strong and I'm independent. We don't want to appear weak. But if we don't create a space for men to join us or to complement our lives or to bring their masculine energy, they're going to find someone who will, And I don't mean to go back to the 1950s of having a martini ready when the guy walks through the door. What I mean is creating that space of saying, I'd love your opinion on this. I think even just asking for help, that's an exercise that a lot of my clients, I teach them. This is not even on a date. Just start practicing. It's like muscle memory when you're working, when you're working out. Just start getting into asking for help, complimenting, acknowledging a man and his tenderness and his kindness, because that goes a really long way.
A topic that has been on repeat is vulnerability. And how a lot of us, men and women, have stigmatized being vulnerable, when really, when you get comfortable in vulnerability, it really enriches relationships and builds trust and a much deeper connection. I think that's another trait, both sides of this.
Yes. And we all want to get there. There's nothing better than being cozy with someone and just being yourself and just being in the same room, knowing that everything is good in the world. That's the best part.
And if vulnerability can lead to that authenticity, how much more meaningful our relationships would be with each other.
Yes. But we're so afraid of that. Well, guess what? We've been hurt before. And if I'm vulnerable,
But there's a part of letting go of the ego in that in search of something bigger. What do you do for yourself, Lori, to continue to engage and commit to each client at this level? What do you do for yourself to stay grounded in your own life?
Well, I don't overbook myself. That's really important. And I also have boundaries. I do a lot of reading. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I try to keep very fresh on topics. Psychology mainly, not dating, because dating is pretty much a new thing. It's only like 100 years old. 100 years ago, women were promised to men. So it's a relatively new thing. But where I live now, I live right by the Atlantic Ocean. I grew up in Southern California by the ocean, and she speaks to me. Every morning I walk along the beach, and every morning I walk my dogs. And to see the joy in my dogs running, I have almost a 15-year-old dog who is running like she's a puppy. And that brings me joy. I speak out loud when I am at the ocean. I speak my gratitude. I just speak thank you for bringing me here. Thank you for giving me the courage to see you and be with you and be around you. I didn't know one person here. I just blindly said, I'm going. I'm selling my stuff. I'm moving. I'm going there. I hike. I love being in Mother Nature. She soothes my soul. So that is my balm. Friendships are my balm. My girlfriend tribe is my support system. My guy friend tribe.
I love hearing the way each person I talk to defines self-care.
Mm-hmm.
It's different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've moved beyond seeing self-care as getting a quick mani-pedi. It's that walk in nature that really grounds me.
Mm-hmm.
It's that making sure that I have a phone call or a coffee date with my best girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
Taking time to realize what are those things that surround us in our environment, that bring us peace.
Mm-hmm. I mean, my dogs are a big part of my life too. I mean, they keep me active, but they get me out in nature. And one never knows where those connections are going to go. It's, the domino effect.
I am a lifelong lover of connecting those dots.
Mm-hmm.
It's been so fun, Lori. I talk about making connections. Like I've so enjoyed having this time with you.
Well, I am going to invite you here to Maine whenever you want to come. Thank you, Theresa.
Thanks for joining us today. We invite you to hit subscribe and to keep coming back each week for a new empowering conversation. We look forward to seeing you at our website, where you'll find our newsletter, event dates, and other amazing resources. Visit interwoven.com, that's interwovxn.com, to sign up today. This show's copyright is January of 2023. We want to thank In Context Inc., digital marketing agency, and the Sugar Maple Bar for their support this season, as well as our producers, Theresa Kopak, Rebecca Jankowski, and Jen Gilmore. All original music was created and performed by Janet Ransdell and Susie Muehlbauer.